All right, welcome to another episode of What's Your Poison? And tonight, Monday night, we are very excited to have a very special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, my mum. Hi.
Hi,
Uh,
nice to meet you.
Welcome. Thank you for coming onto the show so late. This is weird, I
You're
know, but
welcome.
let me explain to you why. It's always something I've always wanted to start a podcast where kids interview their parents. I just thought it would be really cool because I think you go through life never asking your parents questions about
Mm,
themselves. No, I don't. Okay,
okay.
so I know you've been asking me. I have no questions prepared, none,
Okay,
and I've got no agenda. And the idea is to have a whiskey with my mum
okay.
and just to have a conversation and record it for prosperity under the guise of a podcast called "What's Your Poison."
Did you say
Um,
posterity or prosperity?
I said, moving on. What are you drinking tonight, Mom?
Jane B, 12-year-old. Not my favorite. And you? Yeah, same one. Did you take
Same
that
one.
from my house? Maybe I
Did
gave
I?
it to you. Yeah,
I think I.
because I'm
Yeah, I
drinking
think I
the
did
same thing.
actually.
Look,
Cheers. Good job. Well, cheers to you, Mom.
cheers to you.
I do know one weird thing. Well, let's just have a little. I do know that I don't know if what it's like for other people, kids, but
Yeah.
having I always remember not being able to drink near you or with you until I was like 30 or something. Like having a drink with your parents just feels like a weird thing, but now
Okay.
it's so cool that we can just do it.
It is. I
So you
agree.
only you sent me that story about Muhammad Ali today. You only found out today that my birthday shares Muhammad Ali.
You probably have told me, but I forgot. Well, I'd forgotten. But when I was thinking about this memorial that's going on in Houston for George Floyd, this guy who was murdered by the
Yes,
police,
yes.
I remembered that when we lived in Houston, I remembered people telling me about this very, very expensive road in Houston. I think it was called, can't remember, I looked it up today, where
Stay
um,
centered, Mum. Stay in the middle of the
yes,
frame.
I'm trying. Okay. Where and I think they had said that either Muhammad Ali had bought a house there or and was the only black person in the road, or he wanted to buy a house there and wasn't allowed to. And just came back to me today. But when I was researching it, but then I couldn't find anything else about this. It said that actually Jews and blacks weren't allowed to buy in that road. So we're in good
Wow.
company. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't remember any of it, but my upbringing sounds very rock and roll from the stuff that we've unearthed. Where I know I was born in Port Elizabeth, and I lived there for not long time, and then somehow we lived in Norfolk, Texas. What was that? What was going
No,
on?
we
I've got the
we were
version of the
live.
story that sounds good in the media, but I actually don't really understand the how it worked.
Well, what happened was um, your dad wanted to go back to England. We were living in Port Elizabeth, where I'd grown up, and I came back to have you. Simon was born there. Then we went to live in England. And then when I was pregnant with you, I decided to come back and have you in Port Elizabeth. So I came back. And then we went back to Norfolk. And then we stayed there for a while. But during the time of living in Norfolk, Dad had to go and do he was transferred or he opened an office in Houston. So we went to live in
Could have been
Houston for a
anything.
little while. What do you mean?
Could have been
What
anything
are you
with him. He
talking about?
could have been opening an office or being transferred
No, no, no. He
or
was opening an
building
office
a
because
power plant.
no, 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 no. He was with he was sort of legitimate in those days, and and he worked for this company.
Hmm.
we went to Houston to open it. What did you say? Where did we go? Oh, we were in Houston. We were in Norfolk, Houston, and then we went to London.
So one thing I know about Dad, but I never really got where he got it from, except I obviously realize now Houston. He always thought he was a cowboy till his
Yeah,
last days.
he
He had
wanted to be a. That was
cowboy
his
hats.
dream, to be a cowboy.
Always had cowboy hats. He wanted to be
Cowboy
cremated in his boots.
shoes.
Did we do that?
Yes,
So we cremated
I
him in his cowboy
don't
boots.
think so. Yeah, I
We
don't think
didn't.
so. I
Uh,
doubt it.
you've got a gigantic horse saddle, like cowboy saddle, in your
Yes,
toilet.
yeah, my
And
toilet. Well,
did
I
that,
was
and
going to sell that, but you guys told me not to, so I've
oh,
kept it.
it's beautiful.
I'm gonna lug it around for the rest of my life.
People used to stop him in the street and think he was Kenny Rogers.
When he was much younger. Yeah,
Well, Kenny
when he
Rogers
was
also got older.
younger. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, when he was, you know, when he was about 30, between 35 and 45, they used to think he was Kenny Rogers.
When did his cowboy fetishism start?
I think he always sort of, I don't know, he liked what he liked about being a cowboy was not actually being a cowboy, I think. He liked the fact that there were no rules. That's what he loved about South Africa in those days. He said there were no rules, and you could just do whatever you wanted to do. You could be whoever you wanted to be. And he loved country music, as you know, that was part of being a cowboy.
Yeah,
And I think he fancied living on a ranch, riding horses across the plains, kind of thing. That was
yeah.
his romantic dream.
What did you want to be when you were growing up? Sorry, just can you just straighten your camera a little bit? Just tilt it towards. There we go. Good work,
Okay.
Mom.
What did I
What?
want to be?
Yeah, because often when I'm with you, you tell me, "Oh, I was going to be a," and then there's quite a few things on there.
What did I want to be? When I was very young, I wanted to be a nurse, believe it or not.
I can believe it.
And then I don't know really. I mean, then I discovered the Beatles, and then everything changed. When
Come
I
on,
heard "Please Please Me,"
yeah.
then all I wanted to do was be English, and go to
And what?
England and be with an Englishman and be an English model because there were all
Smoke
these
and drink.
yeah, and there were these fantastic magazines that you got from England
Hmm.
with models. I think the one model was George Harrison's girlfriend. Just Google who she is quickly. What was her name?
Well, I'm sure you had a few. If I Google that, I'm going to be there all
No,
day.
no, no. She was the famous one.
Was it the one who married
Uh,
Eric Clapton?
yeah,
Patty
that one.
Boyd.
Patty Boyd. Yeah, and she had
Uh,
this. They used to wear white. These girls wore um, white shiny boots and short skirts and long straight hair, and we wanted to be them. Wanted to be those girls and be with Englishmen, and that
I don't know why.
was
I'm remembering a story you once told me about a teacher
yeah.
who took your stomach and twisted it on her thumb. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No,
Because
that
I.
was junior school. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
That
What
was in
what is
junior school where we used to get tortured in those days.
what's the
Yeah,
story
that
there?
was Erica's school. No, there was no story. That's what she did to everybody.
What, she just took you by the stomach and twisted you?
If you didn't do anything, things properly in gym,
Yeah.
she would take. She got fired in the end. She was an absolute sadist. She was terrible.
What was
Yeah.
your relationship like with your parents in your teens? Because you
Um,
so just for context for everyone, you got two sisters
who's there?
and huh?
Is there anybody there?
No, I mean for people who are listening or watching.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, you got two sisters. You are.
Yeah.
Describe your
I'm the
sisters for us.
eldest. Oh. My
That wasn't supposed to be a trick
sister.
question.
What can I say? I've got two sisters. I'm 6.5 years older than Moira, my middle sister. She was sort of the tomboy in the family. My father used to take her to boxing matches, and well, we all used to go. My dad, when we were teenagers, my father was a compere at stock car racing, so we used to go and
Really?
watch stock car. Yeah, he used to be the
What do you used to
announcer
do
at
the
stock car.
announcers?
Yeah, and we used to
Wow,
go
I
and
didn't
watch
know that.
stock car racing, and we used to love going to football. There was also football on a Friday night in English. A lot of Englishmen came to join the PE City. So we also used to watch football when we were sort of youngish teenagers.
Mm.
I had Moira, who was 6.5 years younger than me, and Shaki was a baby. Sharon, she was 10 years younger than me. So she was the baby sister for a long time,
Still is.
and still is. Oh, I don't remember. We didn't probably didn't interact that much when we were growing up because I was much older than them. So when I was 18, all I wanted to do was escape from Port Elizabeth. And Moira was only 12 then. Shaki was 8.
How old were you when you escaped from PE?
Um, I think I left when I was about 18 or 19. I went to Johannesburg,
And
and and had a really nice job there, which I loved. As a theatrical agent, and that
tell
was
us more
really
about that
good.
job.
We used to book big artists who came out from all over. Um, who did we book? Percy Sledge, the Everly Brothers. And we were all kids. We used to run around putting up the posters, and then we used to get first night front row tickets, and we used to go to the shows, and we used to book the hotels, and well, it was really fantastic. It was a great job that I loved it.
Wait, and cool. And was this before you met Dad?
Now, I'd met him already in Port Elizabeth when I was still in Port Elizabeth. He came to
Mm.
live there. And then he followed me to Johannesburg. So he came to Johannesburg.
Nice.
And then while we were in Johannesburg, he left and did that overland trip with an Alfa Romeo where he drove back to England
From Cape Town to England in Alfa
from
Romeo,
Johannesburg in an
from
Alfa Romeo.
Johannesburg. And this was, I've heard the stories about being shot at by border police and crazy stuff like that. Was that
No,
trip?
no, that was a different time. I think being shot at the border police was when he was doing work in Namibia or somewhere many years later.
Okay.
He wasn't. I
I mean,
don't think he was shot at in the overland trip.
who did he go
It was
with?
a really. He went with one friend, one guy that he went with, and I think they picked up people along the way, and then there were, like a lot of people, it was a really cool thing to do in those days because you could go through all the countries that you can't go through now. A lot of the countries you can't go through now, like Afghanistan and Pakistan. I don't know, but he went up to the tip of Africa. He drove up to Africa, to the top of Africa, caught a boat, I think to Mumbai, and then drove all the way back to England.
I mean,
He
that's
was a real
crazy.
adventurer. Yeah, it was an
Huh.
amazing trip. Amazing. Yeah.
And what did you learn? What did you find out about Dad's sort of upbringing? Because that's always been a bit of a sort of, mystery.
Really? I thought he spoke about it. I think Dad's upbringing was sort of very different to mine. I mean, my upbringing was quite, I suppose you'd say, soft, like in Port Elizabeth, going to the beach on a Sunday with my mum when I was small. Beaches were beautiful. It was kind of relatively safe if you were white and, suburban. And he grew up sort of in quite mean sort of streets, quite tough. And I think, for him, the defining thing in his life was that his mum, who was very, very close to, until he didn't have a relationship with his father until he was much, much, much older,
I
long
remember because
after
he
you
came to
kids
stay
were
with
born.
us.
Yeah, but he
And
hadn't had a relationship really with him for many, many years. And and when I first met him, his mum had died. I think he was 17 or 18 when his mum died, really painfully of cancer. And and he absolutely adored her, and he was, I'm sure, her favorite. I think from what he said, like her favorite son, and um, and he resented his dad for many many years and thought that his dad had been responsible for her unhappiness and her death and all of that. And then many years later, he sort of reconciled with him, and
I mean, retrospectively, that was a must have been monumental. I mean, I didn't really know what was going on, but I remember that granddad who we never really knew. I think we saw him every many years. I used to. All I remember was when I was a kid, we played checkers with him at his house once a
yeah,
blue moon. And then
yeah.
he was living with us in South Africa, and we
Well, he came
converted the
to stay on a
garage.
holiday. Yeah, no, we converted
I think
a
because he,
like a made like a
yeah,
sort of a cottage for him.
because I think he was a
Yeah,
hardcore smoker at the time, and he needed a place to smoke.
yeah,
Is that
yeah.
interesting?
Um, so he had remarried. Um, I don't know when he remarried, but yeah, I mean that was
Mm.
it was a very when I met him, I was the first time I met him when I first went over to England, and of course for me then he was sort of completely different and kind of quite foreign, and I must have been very spoiled because I remember the first time we went out somewhere with him and he allowed dad to pay, and I was kind of shocked because I'd never seen my parents, doing that. He was just, I found him very peculiar. And and the day that dad and I got married, dad waited the whole day to hear from him, and he didn't. But I think it wasn't because he was unkind or thoughtless. I think he just didn't know any better
Mm.
because he'd come from a very, very tough background, I believe. He was illegitimate and he never ever knew who his father was. So
Hmm.
that was his story. So I think he must have had his own demons.
So I do know, the one the dad was a serial entrepreneur and had a great many adventures in those
Yeah.
days. But from your side, they mustn't all. Did they all feel like adventures to you as well, or were they like it must have been crazy being married to?
Well, I think I always believed him. He was such a good salesman. And the one thing that we both really had in common, I mean, our birthdays are very close together, so I don't know if
Mm,
that really does mean anything. But we both uh, were very sort of generous in the way we like to spend money, etc., etc. So it was always like it was like an adventure for me. When he said, "I'm going to do this, and then this is going to make me millions and everything," I always just, "Oh, great! When are we going to start spending it?" And I never really got disillusioned. And I never was actually disillusioned with him. But at the end, when I had to start my business, and things really hadn't gone right for him for a while, then I decided to sort of take control of our financial things and buy a house in my name, etc. Because when things started to kind of unravel for him in the end, then everything fell apart in terms of financially. And I think in a lot of ways I find that you have a lot of, I think you've got the best of everybody, but the good thing that you've done is that you've, with all your schemes, I mean, your schemes have always been in the same lane.
don't
His were
call them
often
schemes.
not schemes, I mean, your
Thank
dreams,
you. I'll take dreams, but not
your
schemes.
dreams, not schemes. Your dreams have always
Hmm.
been in the same lane since the day you were born, whereas his went from lane to lane, and he never ever allowed, I think, anybody to mentor. He never had a mentor. That was his greatest downfall, I think. He didn't have a mentor.
I could have done wonders if he'd had someone to guide him. Surely.
Absolutely, because he was so bright. He was one of the brightest people I'd ever met,
Hmm.
and sort of and well read and really sort of very very bright. He was a bright man, and the I think the most outstanding feature that he had was that he accepted everybody for who and what they were. He never judged. I never heard him ever make a judgmental comment about anybody. They could be beggar in the street, the king of England. He behaved the same way towards everybody and would sort of give you the shirt on his back, basically. So he was really a larger than life character in many
Mm.
ways.
And then, you know, how he passed away. What, I can't. 13 years, 12 years. What?
13, before, no, it's 14 years now, because it was just before Tony Ray was born.
Oh,
He
that's right. Of course.
unfortunately didn't ever see any of his grandchildren, which was
I
such a
know that's
shame.
the worst part. And that was a terrible time. There was lots of
Yeah,
other weird shit going on over that time. I
yeah.
don't know if if that's worth bringing up, but
No, I don't
there
think
was
so. Uh, there was a lot of, yeah,
there was a lot of drama around that time,
yeah.
and I don't even know if I don't remember if we've ever actually spoken about what all the stuff that went down at that time.
But I'm sure we did. I think we spoke about it and spoke about it.
Did we?
Maybe you forgot it. I mean, we spoke about it and spoke about it for
Do you
ages. And
feel
Greg helped us.
Greg? Yeah, that was
Yeah,
true. He was an
yeah,
angel for us.
yeah. He was.
Um, would you feel? I mean, I don't think I've ever, and I'm talking about that last day because I remember where what happened. I know that I was on the radio that day,
Yeah,
and I had missed many calls from you,
yeah,
from you guys.
yeah,
And then I remember driving through all the red lights in Joburg to get to the Hyatt. But I don't
yeah.
think I ever really knew what happened on that day.
I'm sure would have told you what happened. I
You're not
mean,
gonna, yeah.
yeah, you could. You want me to tell you?
I do. I really want to know.
We went downstairs to have breakfast. We were going to. I think we were busy with the CCMA because of Belinda.
He'd had two heart
Who,
attacks before. That's what. And
yeah,
I'll tell you
yeah,
one thing.
yeah,
The day before he passed away, I had lunch with
yeah,
him,
yeah.
and he said the doctor has just reduced my beta blockers, and I feel like
Oh,
I've been
that's
living
right.
in
I forgot.
Cottonwell for 2 years,
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
the happiest I've been in such a long time. I feel like I can think again. You have no idea what it's like to live under a fog. I'm clear again. That was the day
yeah.
before.
Uh,
And then we'd had those two shysters trying to steal your business.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we went downstairs and we were going to have breakfast, and I said, um, let's just take a walk around the centre because she had that shop there. And then we saw him, and then I said, well, let's turn back because there he is. I don't think he's seen us. And our car had been pulled round. Maybe we'd had breakfast already because the car was our car was actually parked in front of the Hyatt at the door. So we must have asked for the car. And we had breakfast. Anyway, and we were just getting into our car, and as we were getting into our car, there he was. He followed us to the car, and then he told Dad to get out and started shouting at him. And and then I saw Dad, and Dad had that um, defibrillator fitted the time before when he'd had
Oh
the
yeah,
heart
I
attack.
forgot about that.
Yeah, and the doctor had said to me that if that defibrillator, if the defibrillator kicks in, if he's having a heart attack, it will be as though a horse has kicked him.
I remember he told me that as well.
Yeah. And then this man started shouting at him, and suddenly I saw him rear back exactly as though he'd been
I,
kicked by a horse, and I knew that's what was happening. And then he somehow got back into the car because he was such a big man and it was a small car. It was one of those rentals. I don't know what it was. I can't remember. And the last thing he said to me was, "Tell that man to get away. I am going to die." That's what he said to me. "I'm going to die."
Shame.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Terrible.
And then the paramedics took a while to come. I don't know if they would have been able to save him because they took
So what, were
quite
you
a
just
long
sitting in
time
the
to
car with
come.
him?
No, no, no. We got him out of the car. I don't know who got him out of the car. Maybe it was the paramedics.
Shame.
They laid him down. He died right there on the front, by the front of the high front door, actually. But I've always told, I think I'm sure I've told you about this woman that suddenly appeared.
No,
And I
I don't know
always
about it.
wondered about what that was. Because you know that the height has that slope that goes up to the door.
They've
You know, it's,
changed the whole thing now.
but you know, from the road, there's
Yeah,
a
I remember.
hill to the door. And I don't think anybody ever walked up there because you would drive up there. Nobody would ever sort of be walking around there in Joburg. And this woman appeared, and she was dressed like in those days the ministers' wives used to dress, like a sort of a tunny, but in a suit. I don't know if she had a hat on, but she had like a proper structured suit on. And she said to me, "Is this man in trouble?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "What's his name?" And I told her, and she said, "I'm going to pray for him now." And she started praying in Afrikaans. And the next thing I looked and she was gone. And I always wondered if that was a real person, because it was so peculiar. And that's what
Wow.
happened.
Definitely
Yeah.
drink, have a drink on that. And then after that, you had to wear the pants. Because I remember at that point, you had to transform from a total technophobe to a tech genius.
Yeah, because I'd never used
Learn
the
how to use
computer.
everything.
I'd
Yeah.
never ever even done an email. Dad used to say, "There's an email for you." I said, "Oh, you do, you read it. I can't be bothered." You do it. I hadn't, and then I had to learn how to do the banking, and
That's that.
that's it. Yeah, it'd
Do
be
you
really
have?
nice if he were. Yeah,
No,
I
carry
was
on.
going to say if he was around now because this is quite a tough
Man.
time for me now.
Yes. I mean, you have been in. I mean, I think about you all the time because you are in serious lockdown. You are
I
locked in a
am.
house by yourself for 3 months now,
Yeah.
which must have been very hard on you.
No,
But
it's
kudos,
been okay. It's
it's been
been
amazing.
okay. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been all right. I just
Hmm.
yesterday I told you. I mean, I think until I mean I know other people have got far worse things and are far worse off and hungry and cold, etc. So I'm not kind of comparing myself to anybody, but I was so happy before this. My life was so structured in a way that made me very happy. My exercise, my work,
Hmm.
my kids, and traveling. I was very, very, very happy. And so now that's all. I keep feeling as though my world is shrinking. And
I think everyone
especially,
feels that way. Yeah.
yeah, but I
It's a
feel,
bizarre time. It's hard to explain what it feels like.
yeah, but also because of my age, that I feel that if it shrinks now, if I have to lose my business or have to close it down, my life will absolutely shrink to, I never wanted to get old. I just wanted you to one day take me out of, you know, carry me out of
Sorry,
my coffin from the
sorry
business.
about that.
But I feel that this could make me really sort of age, in a way
How
that I
long?
wouldn't
When did you
like
start
to.
your business, Mum?
In 1994.
So you started a clothing business on a rail. So tell me
Yeah,
about
well,
your
I
early
did
business
start
days.
for, well,
Tell me about your early business days because they were at home.
well, first,
You
no,
just
I first started at home when we were in London
right,
with my friend Joan. Do you remember? Joan Cohn.
right, vaguely.
Yeah. So we started when
John
your
Cohn,
kids were
yeah.
small. Yeah. And we used to go to the wholesalers in those days in London. We were in London. They um, they wouldn't allow anybody in if you didn't have a shop, but some would be allowed in. You had to take black, we had to take black dustbin bags and schlep around London with black dustbin bags and buy the stuff there and then, and schlep it into the dustbin bags and take it home. That's how we started. So that was the first clothing business that I was in. And then we came back
and
to
and,
South Africa. Yeah,
and you're still in it. You just don't have any. You just don't
and I'm
have to
still
schlep
in
around
it.
in black plastic bags.
Yeah, yeah. But I might have to again soon.
Can you tell me anything about me and my brother from the old days?
You and your
We
brother,
we
well,
always got on, didn't we? Mostly.
you always, yeah, you always got on, and there was never really, didn't seem to be any rivalry between you.
We were very different, or we are, and were very different. He was a
Very
naughty
different.
shit. I was a goody two shoes.
And you were always saying you'd had the best day of your life. You used to ask to go to bed at 8:30. You loved going to bed.
I don't know that person. I don't even know what sleep is anymore.
Yeah, yeah. You used to love going to bed. You used to wake up singing. You were always in a good mood. I'd fetch you from school. You would talk non-stop until we got home, telling me everything you'd done.
I
And
know
when
that
you went to
I've done
university,
the same with mine. Never shuts up
and when you
ever.
but you only started talking when you were more than two. We thought there was something wrong with you. But then once you started, we couldn't shut you up.
I've only heard that joke since I was 5 years old. And
That's
also
true.
my other claim to fame is learning to walk on the QE2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you
I
yeah,
no, I'm reminiscing as well. There were about I don't know you uh I remember you thinking that someone in our street, this is when Simon was maybe 16, so I was like 13,
yeah.
was stealing petrol from your car.
Did
You used
I?
to
I
think,
don't
yeah,
remember that.
you
Uh,
once said that someone in our street is obviously siphoning petrol because your petrol keeps going down. But
yeah,
Simon used to steal
take
the
the car.
car and to go to parties, and he took me once. And he was
I
16.
remember that.
I sat
Yeah.
in the back of the car holding onto the door handle, and he took me to some party in
Shame, George.
Rondebosch.
Didn't he drive you around the mountain once also?
I don't
I
know.
remember
I
you
don't
telling
remember
me
that.
that.
He must have then. He had some friends that were older than they
Mm.
seemed.
Don't you remember when Lincoln ran away and hid on our roof?
Didn't
Lincoln
he
ran away from
steal a
home, and then
watch or
Cynthia
something?
told me he was on the roof, hiding on the
Jeez.
roof. But you
Amazing.
know, Simon wasn't really naughty
No?
because his friends pushed the envelope until they were in deep trouble. Simon, he told me once when he was about 16, he knew just how far to go. He never actually went that extra thing that would have got him into real serious trouble.
Because there's
And I
one mate went
think,
to prison.
which one?
I don't want to mention his name, but he went to juvenile detention.
Oh, I don't know, that
The
must have
one that
been
was the one you just mentioned.
on the roof. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think he didn't. I don't think he would have gone that far, Simon. I think also
Hmm.
because of he cared about Dad and I. I think he would have known that that would have been just too much for us. In the same way, when I was young, my friends were all, some of them were really naughty, and I was kind of naughty and, and rebel, but I never wanted to
Too
make
far.
my dad ashamed of me. Yeah, yeah.
Shit, you reminded me. I once went out with some friends. I think we must have been 16. Um, we all made fake IDs and pretended we were at someone else's house and or
I
spent a week
remember we were
organizing
waiting for
this.
you when you came back.
Jesus,
I
I
remember
remember
that.
that so clearly. You sat us down, all of us, because we had said to ourselves, we slept on the squash courts at the school,
Yeah, that's
Westerville.
right. Yeah.
And then we had waited till our plan was to wait till like 6 or 7 and then to arrive and tell you we'd been dropped off by someone's dad. And we walked down the street and there you were standing at the door. It was a
I think that was because one of the dads had started. Everybody was phoning and looking for you. That's how we knew.
I remember, you know what
I
I
think it
remember?
was
The one,
Benji's dad.
no, it might have been the one friend who had asked if he could come with us. And we'd said, no, we've organized
Wait,
this
I
thing
just
so
lost
well.
you.
What have you just pressed? Oh, no. Well, that was dramatic. Maybe I hit a nerve. Let's see if she can come back in. Ah, here she comes.
Problem.
Are you all right? You're back on.
Yep. Yeah, I lost you for a sec.
I remember we'd organized this thing to a T, and then the one friend had phoned us right before we were going out and said, "Can I come with you?" And we were like, "No, we've sorted this thing out. That guy's talking to that guy. That's mum's. We've told them we're at his house." And then he decided we saw him out actually. And I'll tell you as well. I remember very clearly that night. I was drinking sambuca at a bar, and the bouncers threw us all out.
Yeah.
And that was yeah. I don't know. That was
It was
a
the only time that you ever got into trouble, I think.
well, that kind of trouble maybe.
Yeah, but
At
with
school was
us.
a different story. Yeah, because
No,
I
but
mean
I
that
mean
was
with
a
us, that
very
we found you out, yeah.
you guys sat us down and you were very. It was a hardcore. Hard. We got. I think you took my guitar away as well, and that's why I'm shit at guitar. Your
I
fault.
don't remember that. I don't remember that.
Are there? Okay, can I tell me a bit about your parents? Because I have very, very vague. I mean, obviously, I remember Granny.
Yeah.
You had a very stoic dad with
What
a,
does that mean? Stoic?
like a manly man, a man's man.
A man's man.
Was a world champion greens bowler who
No,
had a
not a world champion.
not.
Yeah, no, he was. I think he was a Springbok or a Maccabi. I think he was a Maccabi champion. He played in Israel. Bowls. Him and his brother. They both were bowling champions of their club. And in those days, well, I don't know if it was all men, but men were very not involved with the kids and all of that, especially if they had daughters, I think. They would do their thing and the mum would do. I never went on holiday with my dad ever, you know that?
I didn't know that. Did he have lots of guy friends that he used to hang out with a lot?
Yeah, he only
Did he
hung
go?
out with guy friends.
Did he go out a lot?
Yeah. No, no, he didn't go out, but there were a group of men. They played
They
poker
smoke and
once
drink
a
a lot.
week.
What
They
they play poker?
smoked. My dad wasn't a big drinker. They played poker once a week in somebody's house. And the wives would make all these. Oh, I used to love the nights when we had the poker because my mum used to make these fantastic sandwiches and things. You know, they were all snacks for them. So that was really nice. And once every Thursday, they played poker on a Sunday night, and every Thursday there was drinks at somebody's house. I think they used to take turns, if I remember correctly. So it was kind of macho, and yeah, and but we used to have nice. He was also, he wasn't that. Neither of my parents sort of had very good educations, but they were both very bright, and they always had good education, good discussions at the table because there was no TV. That was at 7 o'clock, I think, some scary thing used to come on the radio that we all used to have to listen to. We all listened to, and my dad always came home the same time every day and went
What did he
away to
do?
bowling tournaments. What do you mean? For a
Oh,
living?
he ran the Nissan
He had a
dealership or something. Datsun.
yeah, Nissan and Alfa Romeo. Yeah,
Oh,
and
what
my
did he
mum
make
worked
of this
with him.
brute called Dad when Dad came round?
Oh no, he didn't like him at all. But then he got to know him, and then he really loved him. Haven't I ever
No.
told you the last thing he ever said to Dad when he left England? We were in England, and he was leaving.
Hmm.
And then we never saw him again because he died after that. But he was very young. You know, he was 56 when he died, my dad.
So young, crazy.
Yeah, yeah. He said to Dad that if he would have had a son, he would have chosen him to be his son. So they would
Wow.
absolutely loved each other at the end. But he didn't like him in the beginning.
Rough around the edges
I
was old
remember
Dad.
he was rough, and I remember when he phoned me once from England, and in those days you couldn't just dial; you had to book a call with the operator, and then this call came through from England. My dad was absolutely shocked. I mean, nobody did that in those days. You just didn't make international calls. It was unheard of. And my dad said to me, there's a sailor, There's a sailor on the phone for you. Oh, God. Anyway,
What do you think is your happiest memory of your life? Your happiest memory, so you don't have to choose.
I mean, obviously, when you children, when you were born, and my
Well, not the birth part,
grandchildren.
because that's not true.
No, not the
I
birth
know
part, but
my birth
have
story. It's fucking hardcore.
it is. But I don't know. I can't really. I can't. I don't know. Honestly, I can't
Okay,
think.
what is what? Yeah.
I can't think of a happiest memory. I'm sorry, I just can't.
What has been the hardest thing you think you've had to endure?
Well, I've had every really hard thing I've endured, besides like dad dying and my parents and all of that. It was very hard for me when my dad died. Um, was has been related to hospital stays. When I was very young, about 3, I got diphtheria, which I don't know if people still get diphtheria. Actually, I
I've
had been
never heard of it.
inoculated. What is? I don't know. I don't think you still get. You get inoculated, and I had been inoculated, which was fortunate because maybe I would have died or something because it was very serious. I got diphtheria, and I had to go to hospital in an ambulance. And I sort of remember that, even though I think I was 3 or 4. And then you had to be in isolation in a ward. Your parents couldn't come in and see you. So my mum had to see me through like a glass or something. She couldn't come into the ward. I think it was so infectious. And I was the youngest in the ward, and the children used to tease me, the other children, and tell me that my mum was there when she wasn't. And my two of my
That's cruel.
most two of my most sort of vivid memories of the must have been a nurse or somebody holding me at the window of the ward, and my mum being downstairs, sort of waving to me. She had a green jersey on that I kept for years. I don't have it anymore, but I kept that green jersey for years. And then also, when my dad came to fetch me, you had to go into a. I mean, I don't know if this is a real memory or not, but it's my memory. You had to be disinfected before you left there. So you had to go into this. I remember this, it seemed like a dark room with a bath in it.
It sounds
And
like
then my,
now.
it does
Sounds like a shop to
actually.
Woolworths.
I don't know if diphtheria still exists. I must have a look. And then my dad, as a treat, he borrowed this huge, I think it must have been a Cadillac or something with a roof off, and a huge teddy bear. He came to get me from the hospital in that. So that's sort of one of my first real memories is that hospital stay. And my mum always told me that before I went to hospital, I was a hell of a show off when I used to sing and dance for the visitors when they used to come, and always showing off. And then when I came back from hospital, my voice was very, very quiet, and I became very, very sort of subdued after that.
Hmm.
So that was obviously very traumatic, I suppose. And then when I had you, was hugely traumatic in the hospital.
Come on
It
then.
was a.
Tell this
I'm not
story.
telling that story. No, but I'm not telling it again, for God's sake now. That story. And then when I was in hospital recently, when I had part of
Oh,
my
you had
lung
a
removed, that was, I obviously don't do hospitals well.
that was very hectic. I forgot about that. And you
Yeah.
obviously have an allergy to hospitals because
I think morphine, hospitals,
you had a very very
anesthetics.
strong reaction to morphine and believed you were
Yeah.
being kidnapped or something,
I
quite
was being
genuinely.
kidnapped. Yeah. I think I was
You still
actually.
think it, which means
Yeah.
maybe yeah.
But why did I talk about this? What did you ask me? What did you
I
ask
asked
me?
you what your most difficult.
Traumatic. Yeah. Then dad's death was very, very, I mean,
Well, that was a
shocking and
tough old time.
traumatic.
Yeah.
And having to tell you kids, for me, the worst thing was telling you guys, you and Sami, that he had died. That was very hard. And What else? What else?
Oh, that's good. So, which is your
Yeah.
favorite grandchild? Jokes.
Oh.
That's a joke.
They're also special in different ways that I love them each equally.
No, that was a joke.
No.
Okay. Oh, that's anything else you feel like I should know?
What would you like to know?
I don't know.
Is there
I
anything
just
I should ask you?
you feel free, go for it.
I mean, you know everything about me, really.
I don't know any
I
of these.
think I'm
Oh,
a.
I don't know any of the things you've told me today.
You must
And I
do. I
and
think you've forgotten.
maybe I've forgotten, but it's I can understand from your side. You may have told me before when I wasn't really. I think we spend our lives not really seeing your parents as people who were young, had hopes and dreams,
Yeah,
and because you go through those sort of teenage years, when you get through them, you never really clock until much later that, oh, there's a whole story here that you don't actually know or maybe didn't take an interest in. And that's why I
yeah.
think it's nice to hear these things from you. That's why
But
I
will
wanted
you
to do
remember
this.
them?
Well, I'm recording them right now, so this is
Well,
that's yeah.
no, I was just thinking that for you, the interesting thing would be the first time I ever heard the Beatles.
All right, let's go. You brought it up. I'm in.
No,
I'm all in.
I was just
I remember the first
thinking
time I heard
that.
the Beatles. Weirdly, do you
Where
remember
were you? Yeah,
that at my for my bar mitzvah, I
yeah.
wanted to spend all my bar mitzvah money on
Mm, mm.
the the Beatles box set CD box set. And you said to me, if you still like the Beatles in a year, then I'll let you do it. And the next year, I still like the Beatles. And you were like, okay, if you still like the Beatles in another year.
So, what did you spend all your bar mitzvah money on?
I don't remember, but I never got that beat. I remember it looked like it was in a bread bin. It came in like a weird black bread bin with a little
Yeah,
slidey thing. Could have been a worth a fortune. That could have been my golden ticket, Mum.
probably.
Must be worth at least 40 Rand today. Tell me about the first time you heard the Beatles or
No, I
Elvis.
just
Oh, we didn't
remember
speak
that
about Elvis.
Elvis was when I was 8.
Hmm.
Elvis, I was 8. And Elsa, my favorite cousin, took me to see Love Me Tender, which was his first movie, at the embassy
Shocking.
in Port Elizabeth. And I remember her saying to me, he's got such kissable lips. And I
You
fell
were
in love.
8.
I thought I would marry him one day. I was absolutely in love with him. My biggest heartbreak was when my father would not allow me to go and see Jailhouse Rock because
Was
he
that
said
what
it
was that a
was.
movie or a play or a was there a
No,
movie
Elvis
Jailhouse Rock?
Presley. Jailhouse Rock was a movie.
Oh.
Yeah, Elvis's movie, which was so innocuous if you look at it now. I think I wasn't allowed to see it. It was a bad influence.
Yeah, he was seen as really as quite a disgusting influence on the youth,
Yeah, yeah. And then when I wanted
even
to
though he looks
join
so
his,
clean cut now.
he does, doesn't he? And so
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah.
So that was him.
And the Beatles, your first time you heard the Beatles.
And the Beatles, I think I must have been, I don't know, probably 13 or 4. I don't know when Please Please Me. I think, was that their first hit? Please Please Me. They played it. I went
Wasn't it
to
Help?
what we,
Hold on, let's
no,
quickly look.
oh no, Help was much,
First
much later.
Beatles hit. Love Me Do. But it
Love
might not
Me
have,
Do,
yeah,
that's right.
Love Me
No,
Do,
it was
yeah.
Love Me Do. And we used to go to these things in those days called bop sessions, which used to be held in church halls, which I also wasn't allowed to go to, but I used to.
How old
And
were you?
what year did Love Me Do come out? Have a look.
62.
So how old was I in
82. What?
62?
No, 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 not 62. Whoa, whoa,
No,
whoa, whoa.
no, 62.
Yeah, 63. 63.
So how old was I in 63?
You have to tell me that.
I don't know. No, not 63. 63. Oh, yeah.
The Beatles' first number one single,
I
which
was
topped the record
14.
retail. 14. There you go.
I was 14 and I was at this session and they played this song the whole night over and over and over again. That was all they played. I'd never heard anything like it. It was just absolutely amazing. It was
I felt the
brilliant.
same way. about them.
It was really brilliant.
Mum,
Hmm.
cheers to you.
Cheers to you.
Thanks for being a magnificent mother. And I love you a lot. And this has been really fun. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I'm glad you've survived lockdown with grace.
Thank you,
There
John.
was some moments in there that wasn't so sure.
Now, I've had a
Although
few shaky moments. A
there is a
bit,
rumor going
bit.
on that they're gonna turn it. We're gonna go back to lockdown 4 on Wednesday.
Oh, why?
I don't know. I just
Lockdown. What are we on?
it's
3?
probably bullshit. There are so many
Why?
people. I don't know. Never believe it. That's what I've heard. I've heard of it. Doesn't matter.
But did you see? I got a thing today that says that they're only opening the borders in February and nobody can come in before February.
What, into the country?
Yeah, international
But
travel.
apparently there are flights going and coming.
I think
Special
we're only
flights and stuff.
repatriation ones and
All right.
cargo flights. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll look
Okay,
back.
Geoff.
We can do another episode next season of this. We can
Jeez,
do
I
it
think
next
it's
session.
enough. I think I've
We,
given you my whole life. In how long?
has this been stressful
More
for you?
than
51 minutes.
not at
Has this been
all.
stressful for you?
No.
Has it been fun?
I was a bit stressed before. I was a bit nervous,
I could
but
tell at
then
the
I got
beginning
over it.
you became quite. Don't take this the wrong way. You were quite English at the beginning. You were quite posh
What do
for
you
the
mean?
first. I
Oh
said
my
for the
God, did I
first 50.
forget? Did I forget to be posh after 15 minutes? How awful.
Nice.
I should have stayed posh. Can I go
Well,
back to being
you're always
posh? Or
posh
we're
to me,
finished
Mum.
now? Thank you, my darling.
I love
And
you a
you're
lot.
always posh to me. I
Am
love
I?
you too. Oh, absolutely. You're my
You
not
didn't
my
tell me
favorite
once
person.
not to drink too much during the show, so I
You didn't
appreciate
drink
that as well.
with me as much as you drink on those other shows. I've seen you. It's quite
Well,
shocking.
having let's bring this to a close.
Yeah.
Love you, Mum. Get out of here.
George, George,
Yes.
I want a proper update soon on
Proper
everything.
update.
Yeah, on
Mum,
everything.
in my
I
defense,
miss.
you get one every like 3 days.
Can I come? I'm gonna come. Can I come and spend the weekend one of these weekends?
You can come any weekend.
I'll bring my own blankie and cushion, so
Bring
you
your
don't
own
have to do
whiskey.
anything for me. And my whiskey.
Okay. As long as I don't have to do anything for you, I accept your.
You don't have to do a thing for me. I just want to
Look forward to it.
leave a little bit.
How, hey, don't forget about us. What are we, chop liver?
Now you two can go and have a bit of
All right.
hickey
Bye,
time.
Mum.
Thanks, Jugs. Been great. Love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.